Welcome to my kitchen. Let's dive right into this explainer and see how a professional 19th century chef, like myself, can transform one single simple fruit into 6 vastly different culinary creations. We're going to be using entirely traditional methods today, working right over my warm hearth, using heavy iron pots, and relying on the steady, intense heat of a wood-burning stove. You know, for us in the 19th century, the seasonal apple harvest completely dictates our family's diet all winter long. Preserving this harvest? Well, it's not just a fun hobby, it is absolutely crucial for our survival. While you might be used to grabbing fruit from a modern grocery store year-round, I'm going to show you how my traditional techniques turn everyday cellar apples into warm crisps, comforting puddings, and highly unique preserves that literally sustain us through the bitter cold. So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll categorize these recipes into crisps, puddings, and specialty preparations, and then, finally, we'll do a quick comparison of the baking times.
Okay, let's start with Section 1, the apple crisps.
Crisps are incredibly beloved in our homes for their straightforward preparation. They offer a really quick, warm respite from the biting cold outside. But notice the flavor contrast here. The Raisin Crisp relies on just a gentle touch of cinnamon, while my Spicy Crisp completely doubles down on the aromatics by adding nutmeg and fresh lemon zest. These spices are highly prized for warming the body during freezing months, and that lemon peel fundamentally enhances the natural acidity of apples that have just been sitting down in my root cellar. For the Raisin Crisp, it's pretty effortless. I simply mix the fruit and nuts, pour over a crumb mixture, and bake it at 380 degrees for half an hour. Now, getting my wood-burning oven to hold a steady 380 degrees takes an absolute master's touch with the hot coals. Also, notice the raisins and nuts. These dried goods provide vital, calorie-dense sustenance when our winter gardens are completely bare. My spicy version, on the other hand, is a much larger batch. I manually pare and core nearly a dozen apples with my hand knife, toss them in those rich spices, and bake them for a full hour. A dish like this, rich in precious butter and heavy brown sugar, is truly the centerpiece of our daily meal. It rewards a household's hard manual labor with a deeply fragrant, spiced dessert. Moving right along to Section 2, the apple puddings. Now we are moving to more robust dishes that act as a meal in themselves to fill the bellies of our working households. My Dutch apple pudding actually requires a bit of culinary chemistry. By combining acidic cream of tartar and alkaline baking soda, I create carbon dioxide gas right there in the dough. This chemical reaction beautifully replaces slow-acting yeast, allowing me to whip up a light, airy dough in a fraction of the time. Alternatively, my sago apple pudding involves soaking sago, which is an edible starch extracted from palm stems, and boiling it until it runs perfectly clear. But boiling this in a heavy iron pot over an open flame requires constant, vigorous stirring so it doesn't scorch. The result, though, is a beautifully thick, gelatinous pudding that binds perfectly with the steamed apples. What I absolutely love about these puddings is the flexibility. Presenting a steaming hot pudding with melting butter straight from the cast iron oven is my favorite way to welcome shivering guests into the parlor. Or, if you store it in the cold pantry, the sago pudding can be enjoyed completely cold the very next day, layered with heavy cream skimmed right off the morning's milk.
All right, let's look at Section 3, specialty apple preparations.
These next unique culinary projects truly show off a 19th century chef's ability to preserve the harvest. Take the dried apple fruitcake, for example. I have to plan ahead by soaking dried apples overnight. By late winter, our fresh apples are totally shriveled, so soaking autumn dried apples miraculously brings them back to life. And I rely heavily on molasses here, mostly because it's much more affordable for my kitchen than refined white sugar. Once they're soaked, I chop and stew the apples with that molasses, being incredibly careful with the hot, bubbling sugar over the coals. Now, when my recipe states to bake in a normal oven, it requires real historical intuition. Since we don't have digital dials, I must literally stick my bare hand inside the oven to feel the temperature of the bricks before trusting my cake to the heat. Now, for my crab apple jelly, the method is entirely focused on extraction. I certainly don't buy pectin at a store. I extract it naturally from tart crab apples by heating them to a pulp. The secret to that perfectly translucent, jewel-like clarity is manually straining the pulp through a coarse flannel cloth rather than a modern metal sieve before sealing it up in glass jars for the winter. Finally, Section 4, a quick recipe comparison. Even back in the 19th century, we have to budget our time between tending the fire, washing heavy linens, and feeding the family. There is a huge variance here. I can whip up the Dutch apple pudding in just 25 minutes or invest a full hour for the sago pudding. Calculating these times while constantly shoveling wood into a stove to maintain even heat is, quite frankly, exhausting. That's what makes the fast, chemically leavened Dutch pudding such a frequent and impressive choice for us.
So, with all these distinct methods and historical techniques mapped out, the only question left is, which of these timeless 19th century recipes will you attempt to master in your own modern kitchen? Whether you harness the magic of cream of tartar or carefully strain pulp through a flannel cloth, you are keeping our culinary heritage alive. Just remember to use your modern oven mitts instead of bare hands when dealing with those hot iron pots. Until next time, keep exploring and keep cooking.